Okay, so just start by telling me a little bit about yourself, like what college you're going to, what you're majoring in, what classes you're taking, etc.
My name is Troy. I'm attending Wake Tech online right now to save some money. I'm majoring in computer engineering, and I'm taking 23 credit hours worth. So, taking Calculus 3, electrodynamics, logic systems design, C++, stuff like that.
Why'd you decide to withdraw from ECU and go to Wake Tech this year?
So, I decided to withdraw because initially I wasn't very intent on going to ECU anyways, but also because I couldn't justify paying full price for tuition when it was going to be online anyways. So I decided Wake Tech was the best decision.
Do you think you still would have gone to ECU if classes would have been in person? If it would have been more of a
I
normal
think I would
system?
have ended up going there, but I would have regretted it.
Hmm. So you like your decision to go to Wake Tech
Yes,
instead?
I think things being online and my decision going to Wake Tech helped me a lot more personally than it would have been going to ECU and spending more money than I could afford.
Tell me a little bit about the classes you're taking, just like how they're run and what you have to do for them.
So most of my classes, since I take a lot of math classes, are mainly just through WebAssigns, the assignments, and then you have the occasional lab that you work on with others. I have a problem set once a week with homework for my logic systems class, and then there isn't really any instruction or any certain time of the week besides one of my classes, which C++ I meet every Monday. And then just besides that, it's your own schedule. Just finish the WebAssigns, do the labs, stuff like that.
Do you like it kind of being set up in that asynchronous way where there's no like specific meeting times?
I personally do because I think it works better with my schedule. I think it allows me a lot more freedom to do whatever I want and just to be more open to take care of business, basically.
You mentioned like working on labs with other students. How is like working with other people been like over or like online?
So working with other people online is pretty much non-existent. It's not actually real. You just sort of split up like a Google Doc and say like for physics I'll do part 1, read over it later, and then you all just kind of merge your document and send it in. It's not really collaborative like a normal lab class would be. It's efficient, but you don't really get the same out of it that you would in person.
That goes into. I wanted to ask, like, how did these classes and I guess specifically the lab class kind of compare to what your expectations for college, like, and specifically for college classes were going into this year?
So I'd always taken challenging classes throughout high school. So I was ready to take things I was interested in that would be more complicated. But at this point, they pretty much feel the exact same. Just doing things online, the labs, the content is very similar to high school for me. Um, I don't think I was really expecting that much more, or that I got that much more out of it.
Um, you've already gone over it a little bit, but like, what are your opinions of learning online and like how the classes have gone? Like, do you
I
think
think
they've done things better?
online learning, for me personally, and I think I'm an outlier on this, has been very good, but I do think it's a double-edged sword because you're sort of forced. It's very convenient, but it's not the same quality as like in-person education would be. You have to teach yourself basically, which I do personally okay with that, but a lot of people don't. Um, what else? How it compares?
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to ask was, um, has there been a difference in the classes you took last semester and the classes you're taking this semester,
They're
especially
the
with the in-person one?
they're the exact same. Besides having a meeting time for one, but the meeting time online classes is it's like watching a recorded lecture. So it's not really like you participate or you get that much of like a group setting out of it, like a class feeling. I sort of feel like I'm like alone. Like there's classmates that are like technically taking the same class as me, but I don't. In my mind and like practically, they don't really exist. It's like I'm just kind of solo taking classes.
So you talked a little bit about like feeling alone in your classes. So has learning online, do you think it's been taxing on you emotionally or mentally?
I think it is grading to a point, just constantly being in the cycle of just getting your work done every week. And especially in my case, there's not really a break between work and leisure like there is with traditional school. So I sort of just sit there, do my tasks, and then the next week I do the same thing.
Do you think having to like do all of your work from home and then at home is also where you do leisure activities? Do you think that's part of it?
I think that's complicated for me and for a lot of other people because my computer's where I have to do all my work, but it's also where I get a lot of my entertainment out of. And that ability to just switch between like working on a webassign or something like that and like watching a show can really kind of dampen productivity and just kind of hinder learning.
Um, Kind of going off that, one thing I wanted to ask was, like, what are like any hobbies or just things you do in your free time besides school?
So besides school now, I just play games, stay in contact with my friends. I 3D model sometimes. I work on electronics for my degree, just trying to design circuits, get a great understanding.
Do you think would you still be doing these things if you were in person, like kind of the same hobbies?
I think I'd keep the same hobbies, yeah. I think I would definitely have less time to partake in them though, because getting to make my own schedule with online classes, I can do my work whenever I want in like a set period and then fill everything else with leisure.
Hmm. It definitely sounds like, from what you described, it sounds like for sure a different experience than kind of what people think of as the normal or authentic college experience. Do you think you've kind of missed out on this, or on the idea of like an authentic or normal college experience this semester or this year?
I think based on most people's definition of a college experience, yeah. But I don't really feel any type of way about that. I'm very focused on what I want to do. I see more of the benefits out of online learning and what I'm getting out of it compared to like social activities or things that I'm missing.
So you think it's better to take these classes that are working towards a degree and like towards a profession than any like other social activities that you'd be doing if you were on campus somewhere?
I think being online, with the distractions it comes with, it sort of gets rid of the social distractions as well. It allows me to be more focused on that.
I see. Um, Kind of going off like this idea of an authentic college experience, how has this year been different from what you expected from college generally and what you expected when you thought you were going to ECU for the year?
So when I thought I was going to go to ECU and I'd be in the same hall with some of my friends from high school, I thought, we would be hanging out all the time, doing classes, not really caring that much. But now I found, with everything being online, being home, all the other pressures of life have sort of gotten off of me, and I've been able to focus more on just the pressure of school. So I've been able to be a lot more successful and focused and driven on that, which I think I wouldn't have had the same of if I was in person with other things.
Do you think part of that comes from like being immersed in your work all the time, since you're doing it from your computer and doing it from home?
I do. I do think part of it has to deal with that. That I always have access to my assignments, and it's always on my mind for the most part because I have very little other things I can actually do.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really go anywhere. There's not much to do.
One of the things I wanted to talk about was your experience in high school and kind of your experience learning in high school. Could you tell me just a little bit about your general experience, of learning in high school?
So most of the time in high school, because I had a medical condition that caused me to miss a lot of school, especially in the mornings and the early parts of the day, I would mainly end up teaching myself or just getting resources from the teachers after the fact. So I think that's prepared me a lot for this, for online learning, having to teach yourself, going over those resources, which in high school I didn't really have the support of many of my teachers. I sort of just kind of did it alone.
Do you think it's been easier this year because education in general is more geared towards online and asynchronous learning?
Are you saying, like, do I think that...
Do you think it's been, if your experiences are similar with, like, kind of having to teach yourself the material, do you think it's been easier this year compared to high school now that like education more generally is more geared towards online learning because of the pandemic?
I think it's pretty much the exact same. I don't sense much of a difference at all. I think the gearing of education towards online is not really, it's not as effective as they could have planned it to be.
So do you think, how effective do you think it was before, like in high school? Or just online?
The thing about, especially my high school experience, was for a lot of my classes we still had WebAssigns, we still had Google Classroom. So it was sort of the same thing transitioning over. It's just now instead of some paper assignments, there's 0.
I know you already got into it a little bit, but do you think your experience in high school helped you with this experience in college just because maybe it wasn't as big of a transition?
Yeah, I think it definitely prepared me a lot to be successful with online classes because I'd already had experience doing things from home, having to teach myself, taking care of work like that. Especially with like productivity things, because I know a lot of other students were sort of shocked with that.
So you think like you were already taking classes essentially from home and online, which kind of also lessened the cultural shock of having to do that, having to take all of your classes online and from home.
Yeah, it wasn't a shock at all to me. I was more prepared for that than in-person classes, I think, personally.
So you think that the online classes you've taken at college have been easier or were an easier transition than having to take in-person classes?
I personally think so, yeah. And I think it's an overall easier experience for me.
One thing specifically I wanted to ask about, and this kind of goes back towards education changing. Do you think your professors in college have been more responsive, maybe more aware of your needs than your teachers in high school?
So I think the interesting thing that college and everything being online allows me to do is everybody's on the same equal playing field as me. So I don't have to explain anything to anybody, medical-wise. They respond a lot, they're a lot more responsive because everybody is online. So everybody has questions, that's how they communicate with their teachers, than high school was, because in high school it was just me. It was sort of my problem. But in college it's everybody's problem. Everybody has to deal with the same thing. So it makes it so there's less pressure on me to have to be super proactive with like emailing and stuff like that. Or I can only communicate with my teachers if I really need it. And I don't have to share that much with my personal like health issues. I can just sort of do everything alone and just take care of all the business I have to.
So do you think your professors are kind of more understanding of your situation now that like everybody is essentially in the same situation?
I think teachers are, like my professors are understanding of everybody's situation to a point. Like a lot of the professors I have for like math and physics, they're older and they're not very skilled with technology and they're not really, their schedules are messed up as well. They upload things at like 3 a.m, stuff like that. So I think some teachers are able to adjust with that and communicate and understand everybody's needs, and others are sort of unresponsive just because they're not used to it in any sense at all.
Do you think there was, like talking about teachers who are older or who maybe aren't as like literate with technology, do you think they had the same sort of like cultural shock as students when everything had to be moved to online?
I think absolutely. I think especially these people who have been teaching these subjects for 20, 30, 40 years, however long, and then they're told in like a week's time that they have to transfer everything to online. I don't think it works for a lot of people.
I know like a lot of professors have like PowerPoints or they have documents that they are not necessarily built for like presenting over a Microsoft Teams call or a Zoom call. Um, so, just like students are having to adapt to new ways of learning, professors are having to adapt to new ways of teaching. Um, do you think, have you had any experiences with professors who have maybe done some form of online teaching before, so maybe they are better equipped to do it now?
So I think in my experience, the teachers who have been better equipped for online learning, they rely more and they supply more things with like discussion boards. They have like logs for you to communicate with them. They record a lot of lectures of them basically talking over PowerPoints and stuff like that. While the older teachers more of just put out an announcement, they put out the readings that you'd need and sort of just say good luck.
So would you say that the best teachers right now are the ones that are more responsive or maybe more willing to change their assignments, like based on what they're seeing in their students?
I think in online learning, it's very hard to be a good teacher. I think you're very limited by the programs you use, Blackboard, whatever it may be. You're very limited by that, the amount of content you can supply, the amount of communication you can actually have just through text on the internet. I think the teachers who are marginally better have a lot more communication, like who have more experience with online learning, stuff like that, but I think it's a very marginal difference. It's very hard for teachers to be good teachers online.
The last thing, or one of the last things that I wanted to get into are, like, what are your plans for the future? Like, where do you plan to go and what do you plan to do next?
So after this year, since I was able to take a lot of credits, I was able to save a lot of money. I plan to transfer to UNC Charlotte for computer engineering, and then from there, hopefully graduate, get a job.
How do you feel about transferring to a bigger school and maybe like moving into a dorm or something like that?
I think there'll definitely have to be an adjustment that I missed out on from having to deal with from like the beginning of this year if I were to go to actual in-person school. But I also, it's contingent upon if things are going to be online as well, or if they're going to actually fully transition to in-person next year. So I think if it's online, it'll be sort of the same thing for me. But if it's in person, it'll be a big switch to deal with.
If UNC Charlotte does all online courses again next year, would you still transfer there next year?
I don't think I would.
You'd do Wake Tech again?
Yeah, I'd continue taking more courses. If I'm out of stuff to do, then I would probably transfer. Like if there's not much more I could get from Wake Tech. But for now, there's no point.
I wanted to talk about, you're talking about like, you think it'll be definitely a big change to take in-person classes? Like, how big of a change or like shock do you think that'll be to go from taking all online courses to maybe taking all in-person courses?
I think all online has made me very productive, but also sort of lazy and complacent in a way that traditional classes have very rigid structure and very rigid time constraints for things, or like things that you're using time in class for. And online class is very free-flowing. It allows you to learn at your own pace, do things at your own pace. So I think that'll be a big point of contention that I'll have to deal with when I get there. This is sort of dealing with that switch of basically going from my own control of my own time and productivity to sort of like my teacher's schedule.
Do you think professors will be, I guess, aware of that online learning has allowed students to kind of make their own schedules, and do you think they'll loosen the time constraints that come with like normal in-person classes?
I think professors are very aware of what like the loosened time constraints do, but sort of the opposite of my opinion on it. I see it as mostly a good thing. They probably see it as more of a people are becoming lazy, complacent, which is true. It makes things very convenient to do, but it also gives you a lot of freedom to take care of things.
So you think if like once professors start in-person classes again, they might actually want to start implementing those time constraints again, because they think it'll make students more productive?
I think yes, just in general, I think I'm different than others in that sense, and that traditional structure is what a lot of people actually need.
Mm.
So like the time constraints, like the rigid in class, today we're doing whatever it may be. I think most professors can't wait to go back to that.
So you talked some about how now that everybody is having to learn online and is kind of in the same situation, that you don't have to explain to your teachers why you were missing classes in high school. Is that important for you?
I think that's very important because I think the constant having to explain my medical conditions, my medical issues that my teachers couldn't possibly understand, and trying to get extenuating circumstances that I needed was overly difficult, and it took away from my ability to do a lot, to be productive, to succeed. So I think now with things being online, without me having to explain to my professors or say anything, it allows me to be more productive, be more successful.
So it sounds like everybody being online removes the variable of like professors not being understanding about your medical condition and how it affects you going to class.
Yeah, it allows me to not have to explain anything just because I get that freedom of my own schedule. I don't, with all my asynchronous classes, I don't have to show up at a set time, be there for a certain amount, do something in that set time period. I'm able to complete the course content, do everything I need to at my own pace, and along with my class, that is.
And it sounds like that is a much better schedule for you, at least.
It works a lot better for me personally, yeah.
Okay. And then the last thing is, I need your name and how you spell it.
Troy Rice, TroyRice.
And then, is there anything else that you want to add?
No, I'm good.
Cool.
Sage.